Welcome back to another video, and if you've watched any of my recent videos, you might have seen this intro. So in this video, I'm gonna do a breakdown of exactly how I created this spotlight effect. Alright, let's dive in and upgrade your motion design toolkit. So here we're in Apple Motion and I have the project opened. So the first thing we're gonna do is look at the background. And for the background, you'll notice what I actually have here is some Gaussian blurs on some circles. So if we turn off those Gaussian blurs, you'll actually see the hard circle edges as we go through each one of the circles. Let's actually run through the animation now that the blur is off. So the next effect that I actually have is a prism effect, and that's found in your filters tab. And the prism effect is what really animates the circles to cause them to be moving. So if we should turn off this prism effect, everything is pretty much stationary as we go through the entire animation. So that actually covers everything that's happening in the background. So for the text, we have the spotlight effect. And to achieve this, what we're doing is using a circle mask to mask out everything. So we have everything inside of a group. Then we have the circle mask attached to that group. And you'll notice it's not inverted. So as the circle passes over the text, it's just showing the sections that we want it to show. And then it scales up to show everything. And then we have finally the words Apple Motion. And what we are using is a behavior that's fading in. And we've adjusted it a little bit to include that drop down. So we've added the position parameter there. So for the Apple Motion logo, you'll notice it's inside a group by itself. And we have a little bit of stuff going on here. So firstly, we have a keyframe. And this keyframe is actually attached to the opacity, where we want it to appear from nothing. So we have a 0% here, and then as it scales up over a couple of frames, it becomes 100%. So here we have an overshoot behavior, and this overshoot behavior is actually working on our scale property. And you'll notice that it pops up and then it kind of bounces a little bit. And to achieve that, there are two ways to do it. You could either go to properties, hit to scale, and this is what I like to do, add parameter behavior, and then go down to overshoot. This applies it directly to the scale property. Or you could go to the behaviors tab with your group or object selected. You could go to the behaviors tab, go to parameter behaviors, choose the behavior that you want, and then there will be an apply to option where you can then apply it to whatever parameter that you want. That's a little bit more technical, so it's easier to just go here, click the down arrow, and choose which behavior you want to apply. So after the overshoot, there's another overshoot, but this time I actually used keyframes to achieve it, and it's applied to the rotation. So you'll notice that there's a little turn before it lands straight. That's happening right there. Finally, we have two more effects to talk about. And this one is a little complex, so let's break it down. Here we have a bounding box, and to actually get this bounding box effect, we're using the align to behavior that is attached to the rectangle. So if we go to the rectangle, you'll notice that this align to square, which is this one here, is set to upper left, and it's also aligned to the center. So that means that the center of this box, the center of the square that's labeled top left, is aligned to the upper left of our rectangle outline. So that's really the same thing for the others, where the top right is aligned to the top right and the align is center. So if we were to change this from center to anchor point, or to left, or to right, or whatever, then the position would change. And then for the other two, we pretty much have the same thing going on, where the bottom right is aligned to the bottom right of the rectangle, again centered, and the same thing for the bottom left, where it's centered and aligned to the lower left. Now, what that means is anywhere that this rectangle moves or animates to, these bounding boxes, these squares rather, will follow to create that bounding box effect. So you'll notice that I'm scaling in the rectangle from the upper left, and as it scales in, the boxes follow suit. So it seems like everything is attached. So the align to behavior, extremely powerful. So finally, the very last two keyframes are really just position keyframes of the Z-axis. As the bounding box covers this section of the screen, you have a zoom in to kind of focus a little bit more on what's happening right there. So all we're doing here is have our position Z keyframe there, and then we go forward a couple frames to add another keyframe, and we simply just punch in to exactly the point that we want. So that's pretty much how I was able to pull off the intro animation. If you want to see more breakdown videos just like this one, just drop a comment below and I'll definitely showcase more animations and breakdowns in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.